Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started here today. This is the Sustainable Fleet Technology webinar series. This is session number 4 for 2023, and today's topic is Fleet Management Information System Solutions to Aggregate Data for Fleet Management, which is kind of a mouthful, but there is just a plethora of data out there, and how do you make sense of it? How do you use it to justify what you're doing, or to justify expenditures, or even in some cases to demonstrate reality? You may have some perceptions from customers or people of something that's going on, and the numbers may show actually something different to say, no, this is the reality. Here's what's really going on, and here's what we need to do. So, fleet has become all about data, and we need to try and make informed decisions with the data information to back it up. And we're going to learn about that today. It can be overwhelming, but there's some tools out there to simplify it, and outcomes are a really nice format and information where you can make decisions and not be overwhelmed. Do want to give a shout out to our sponsors. You've heard this over and over for years. We are an underfunded organization, so there is a funding gap, and we need to seek sponsors. We do some fee for service stuff. We do the conference, etc. And we do appreciate the support of everyone on those activities. And sponsors, we look at long-term relationships. These are great companies with some great solutions that can help you out there. This series, let's say the collaborators and supporters on above that are NAFA, Sourcewell, and the NCDOT, other folks that helped this happen. A couple upcoming webinars. And later in June, we're going to do a hydrogen session. Port of LA will be one of the features. They are really leading the charge. They have a station out there. They're doing their drayage trucks are hydrogen, and they have some day cabs getting freight off the port as well. And then telematics, again, data, and what data do you want to look at depending upon your goals, and to help you understand what's going on in real time and make decisions. So that is later in July. There'll be other sessions added. We're going to run these through December. Format, if you've been on these before, Q&A at the end. Submit your questions to the chat, and we'll do that at the end. We're scheduled for 2 to 3:15 p.m. We're going to try and get through our presentations in about 60 minutes or less, and leave some time for Q&A. There is a handout, and this session is being recorded. That will go out to everyone who registered in the next few days. And on top of that, it will be posted on our website, the sustainablefleetexpo.com website. And here is that URL, sustainablefleetexpo.com. It has information both on the webinars. We have recordings and the handouts from all the webinars going back to 2021. There were quite a few, seeing that we were doing pretty much everything via webinar for a couple of years there. And then information on the conference, which is at the Raleigh Convention Center, August 14th through 16th. Please check that out. Love to have folks join us at the conference and join us on the rest of these webinars. All right, agenda for today. I'm Rick Sapienza. I'm going to MC this, and I'm doing our introduction. We're going to have Mark Knight as our subject matter expert from AssetWorks, and he is going to talk about the tools out there in a general manner, and some of the ways they're being used, and then show some use cases as well. And then we're going to move into some fleet end users with Miami-Dade County and Scott Stevens, and then Ron Worth with Sacramento County. Sacramento has been at this for a while, aggregating data and building cases. They got some TCO stuff, some other dashboard stuff on service levels, et cetera. They're what I would call one of the advanced users of this tool. So I'm really happy to have both Miami-Dade and Sacramento on today, and I think it's going to be a good learning session. Here's my contact information. Absolutely feel free to reach out to me at any time on anything. I'm here as a resource and willing to help with the knowledge I have, as well as connect to the network that I have that's even a huge depth of knowledge beyond what I know. And here are today's speakers. And we have Mark Knight with AssetWorks. He's a senior industry consultant. Scott Stevens with Miami-Dade County Internal Services Division. He's a fleet manager. with Miami-Dade, and then Ron Worth with Sacramento County. He is the Fleet Advanced Planning and Sustainability Manager. And I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to Mark. Mark, all yours to get the session going. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, and welcome everybody this afternoon. I'm Mark Knight with AssetWorks. I'm one of our product champions behind our analytics initiatives. And so I'm going to give you an overview today of how we're using cloud technologies to help advance fleet data. Good. Next. So the problem we have today is that our asset and fleet data is just about everywhere. Not only is it going to be found in your fleet management information system, it's also going to be found in things like your ERP system, maybe your telematics provider, third-party vendors that you have relationships with, and other secondary data sources. And getting all that data from those various data sources into the hands of stakeholders is a real challenge for many of our customers, as well as for just about anybody in the industry. Next. So if you take a look at your basic fleet management information system, it really has a specific role. One, it's your primary master data source. So this is where you're going to go create your asset records. You're going to maintain that type of information about the individual assets. And it's also going to be used to capture all the transactions that go into operating your environment and your fleet. One of the things that an FMIS does is it takes and applies business rules and data logic to the data that's coming in, and then organizes that and stores it so that we can support processing of transactions, typically to feed things like your financials and other operational systems. Good. Now, in most FMIS systems, you're going to have a series of tools available that you can use today to, extract data. You might have an online query. Maybe there's some out-of-the-box standard reports written in, say, a Crystal Reports or some other reporting application. You might have a dashboard application built in, or maybe even an ad hoc and a self-service reporting tool. However, these applications are all focused on the data in the FMIS system itself. And when we want to start to bring in this external data, that presents a challenge to us. Next. Now, we know there's a lot of data out there outside the FMIS. Your fuel management system will contain a whole series of transactions about how much fuel you've used. Now we add in charge management systems to bring in battery data along with fluid data. You've got telematics and a variety of different sources where information can be found. Next. So the legacy approach to handling that data has been to develop point interfaces to those single sources. So typically, let's say this was your telematics provider. There might be an interface right from there that would pull in, say, your meter readings. And those meter readings would then be processed through the business logic and stored alongside with other meter readings you've got from other sources in your FMIS. And typically the approach would then be to take and use either the standard, or maybe you write a custom report against that raw data. Next. However, technology has evolved pretty rapidly in the last few years. Shown here, it's examples of two legacy reports that I actually wrote 23 years ago as part of the M5 application when I first joined AssetWorks. These are very flat sort of reports, grid, very simple sort of graphs. If I wanted to drill into, say, this location productivity summary and see what made up the location work at 01 Main, I might have to go and run a second report. So, that old sort of approach really has limited support for most of our customers. And again, it's limited just to the data in the FMIS. Next. But if you look at today's next generation of visualizations, these tools use multiple KPIs, as well as cross-filtering to create an interactive experience. So whereas in this case, in this example, I'm taking that same labor productivity data, and now looking at across, I've got a series of metrics that I can evaluate and see some very discrete measures. I don't have to drill into the data, add it up to get to it. It's presented right to me. But let's say that employee there on that right-hand side, that one on that outlier, I want to see what's about them. Next, if you got a couple little examples here, but if I click on that, you'll see that I can actually drill in and highlight that individual employee. And down the bottom right, I've got this little employee details example. If I click that, then that's going to open up another window that's going to, go ahead, actually show me detail for that individual employee. And if I want to, then I can drill in to say a particular job, such as the perform APM services next, and it's going to pop up and show me the detail for that employee. But you see how just in this example, how technology has evolved from very flat, static, just information to now interactive visualizations that I can actually glean some insights by just drilling through and looking through the data. Next. So a lot of our customers say, well, I have dashboards. And yes, if you look at what the operational dashboards are in most of FMISs, they're tactical. They're part of the workflow process. They're going to give you an individual KPI or metric that are going to drive some sort of action to the user. And typically those users are people on the front lines in the shop, and people working directly with that data. However, next, if I have a strategic or executive dashboard, it's really more about the why. It's taking multiple KPIs and looking for things like trends and relationships in order to share that data with a sort of a higher level, broader set of users in the other stakeholders, not necessarily using the data day to day, but wanting to know what that data is telling them. Go ahead. So, but one of the issues with getting data out of your FMIS is that to do analytics, you really want to use a different type of data structure. And that structure is typically called a fact dimensional data set. And what that means is that the facts are the data that we want to analyze. And so that's either the transaction or event. And then the dimensions are more of the descriptor of what happened, who, where, when did it occur. If we go to the next slide, I'll show you'll see an example here of a work order. If I take a work order, for example, around that work order are a series of dimensions. There are probably data fields that you filled in as you did. What was the asset? What department? What did I do? When did I do it? What type of asset? Now, underneath that work order, though, there's a set of facts. What labor transactions occurred? Who did it? How long? What did they cost? What parts did I use? What vendors did I use? How much did they pay? All that represents facts that now I can describe using in the context of using these work order dimensions. So that's a very different structure from a relational FMIS database where each of these pieces is being compartmentalized in a way to facilitate data processing. Go ahead. And so one of the approaches to solving this is to utilize the cloud. Within the cloud environments, there's a lot of new technologies available that allow us to take that raw data, extract it using the APIs that those data sources provide, pull that directly into the cloud, and then use some cloud technologies to transform and normalize that data into a structured data warehouse. And then from there, I can actually report against the data. So rather than bringing this external data and putting it alongside my FMS and then having to reprocess it again to make it easy to report on, we just bypass the FMIS and move the data into the cloud and just report against it alongside, though, with the data pulled from the FMIS. I'm going to go ahead. So where our example of this is our analytics platform. So this is an off-the-shelf cloud framework that we developed in order to support not only out-of-the-box content, as I showed here, but also to help our customers aggregate and bring in their fleet data. Next, please. And so one of the things I want to talk about, just a little bit of the type of cloud technologies that exist. that make this process a little bit easier and better to do, and kind of can support the work that Rod and Scott are going to show you. With analysis services, this is a cloud tool that's available, produced by Microsoft, with the whole intent of taking data from various data sources, combining them into a data set and data model, and then presenting that data model to users, which then they can use to build their own ad hoc reports. And so, for example, go ahead. What we did is we took and built an analysis services data set that looks at, say, work order data. And each customer in that cloud environment has their own data environment. They connect directly through the analysis services to that data. And what analysis services can provide then is a simplified view of the data that's ready to be added right into a report. Let's go to the next. So for example, in this case here, we take the structured fact data set, and let's say I want to take my utilization data. We have a data model around utilization that gets pushed up into analysis services. Go ahead. And what this shows here, an example of what that data would look like from an analysis services connection. If you've ever written reports and you're familiar with an entity relationship diagram, this is very similar. But one of the things that's very different is that in this analysis data set, rather than looking at just the raw data on the tables, you're actually seeing a set of pre-built aggregates as well as custom-built functions that have been built into that data model. And so what that means is then a customer just simply has to, go to the next slide, please, connect using into analysis service with whatever reporting tool they like. So we used Power BI for our out-of-the-box content, but anybody could use any of the available standard tools that out there today, such as Tableau or Excel, just to connect right into that data. And then the advantage is, if I go to the next slide, please, is I can actually then just take and drag and drop those pre-built functions right into a report or visualization of my own without having to go through a lot of effort to, again, write some code to aggregate that, maybe a view, some process in the background. All of that's being done through these cloud tools and making it much more easy for us, for end users, to build their own visualizations and reports. Go ahead. So one of the things that we've talked about, though, is in this is the challenge faced with standardization and having standard data, that and also bringing in external data. And so I'm going to go through an example here of how we brought external data into the platform. In this case, VIN data. All of our customers always ask us, oh, I want to be able to VIN decode my assets. I know I can do this. There's lots of tools out there. And there's actually a free federal service, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration VIN-PICS database. They have an API that anyone can connect to, and you can pull from that database by just simply giving them a VIN. They'll pull back up to 148 data points. Now, what we found through a sample of our data is, though, not everything's complete. Not every field has values, because it's up to the OEMs to populate those fields. However, we did find that there's a good core amount of data that is pretty consistent across that. And so what we did is we connected to that API, grabbed that data, and then brought that data into our application, as shown on the next slide. Well, what we did there is actually, this is just a simple view that shows the individual asset with the VIN decoded data alongside how that customer had classified the manufacturer, year, make, model in their FMIS. So one of the tools here is to, one, did I accurately identify the asset in my FMIS and described it, or the ability to actually standardize maybe things like makes and models. As you see, for the example here in the VIN, it's a Mustang Mach-E, whereas in this customer database, it's simply just a Mach-E. So one of the advantages of bringing in this sort of external standardized data is that we can introduce some standard nomenclature and standard terms into our data, even though it's not necessarily structured the same way. Right, the next. The other opportunity is standardizing repair data. And one of our challenges is, as an off-the-shelf software company, is building reports that any customer could potentially use. But when every customer can use their own code schemes, and not every customer adopts the same standard sets, building those out-of-the-box standard reports is difficult. And so often what we are left with is a framework where our customers end up having to develop their own, as actually Scott and I think Ron are going to show you. But one of the things that we've tried to do, and one of the things the cloud allows us to do, is to actually set up standard reference tables to industry standard code sets. And then by using a, go ahead, next slide, please. Using a data translation worksheet, customers are able then to map their existing code sets to these standard code sets, and then integrate these standard codes into any of their analysis. And the advantage too is that now, as we start to get into broader industry sharing of data by using standardized references, or at least having a crosswalk to standardizations, we can all get to start to speak the same language. In order to do data aggregation, data standardization is going to be critical. This is something that we've been promoting to many of our customers, is to take a look at your data. Now is a good time, particularly as data is evolving, to look at your data standards and update your tables and references to adopt as much industry standard terminology as you can. Because as we start to aggregate data, we have to be on the same page to make it all work. And just to sort of, next slide, please. And this is just sort of illustrates that the fact that I can bring those standards in, and then based off of those standard definitions, we can go ahead and construct easy to build common term reports. And so just to kind of summarize, go ahead, last slide here. Really just kind of bring it all home is that there's been a lot of evolution in technologies in the last 10 years. Those legacy reporting applications are now tech debt for most fleet management information companies, because we do need to reach and beyond just our own FMIS data. Additionally, FMIS systems are not built for analytics. So you need a different environment if you're going to want to support things like predictive analytics and other AI tools. And that's where the cloud comes in. The cloud is optimized to support this. There are great tools out there. They do have a cost, but generally that cost is going to be less than what it would cost perhaps to modify your FMIS or build out within those environments. And then lastly, just to kind of reiterate, adopt as much data standardization and classification as you can. So I'll look forward and answer any questions here at the end, and I'll pass it back to Rick. Thank you, guys.
Great, Mark, thank you. That was a really good overview of some of the stuff that goes on behind the curtain, we'll say, a little bit of the magic there. And then that point about standardization is really important, you know, because you can have one asset class show up in 5 different ways, and then it's not meaningful. So really appreciate that. Thank you. So next up, we have Scott Stevens with Miami-Dade. And Scott, and let us know what you guys are doing out there and how it's helping you and making life easier in some cases.
Yeah, I'll tell you, after following up with Mark, what a great presentation that was. I'm not sure mine's going to be very good. No, I'm just kidding. Next slide. Hi, everybody. My name's Scott Stevens. I am a fleet manager here in Miami-Dade County. A little bit about our operation. Our county operation is 19 maintenance facilities. We service just under 9,000 vehicles on a monthly basis. Yeah, it's a big operation. My day job is the fuel manager. So I have 29 fuel sites, 3 bulk fuel sites, and I fuel 11 external municipal agencies. But my other hat is also the fleet management information system. We use the AssetWorks M5 platform. I manage that on a day-to-day basis. Next slide, please. So based on what Mark was just talking about, we kind of went through that here in Miami-Dade County to where we have some advanced analytics that we needed to do. And as great as M5 is for us with the ad hoc reporting and the canned reports, it couldn't do operationally some of the things that we needed the data to do inside the software. So we had to look externally. But before we did that, we had to kind of figure out what it was we wanted to show. What data was it that we wanted? We had to ask ourselves some questions. Where is it? Where do we want it to take it? What can we use to display it? Can that data be accessed and reported, say in Power BI, or is there going to be some other platform, maybe a cloud platform to where we can analyze that? For us, I got with our IT folks, our experts there, to kind of start this journey. And I didn't know exactly where it was I wanted to go to begin with, but I knew an idea. I had a general idea of what I wanted us to do with some of our data, and especially for a couple of our larger customers, like our police force and our solid waste department, which are 85% of our heavy operations, and then police is probably 80% of our light operations as far as turning wrenches and fixing vehicles. So we kind of looked at it that way. What story do we want to tell? Where can we grab the data? What data are we going to incorporate into this tool? And then we went to kind of some iterations from there. Next slide, please. So once we kind of had an idea of what data we wanted, in our case, it was a lot of work order data. Then we had to start engaging with our clients to figure out what it was they wanted to see. If we were going to provide them some high-level dashboard or high-level reporting that's advanced analytics, what was it that they wanted to see? And most likely, if you guys are dealing with your own customers, they probably don't know. They probably don't know what it is that they want to see, but you can help guide them along by asking them, certain questions. Where are the gaps? What are your complaints with our operation? By asking them what things they ask for, what things do they ask for on a normal basis? What reporting are you having to do as a one-off, consistently? Those are the kind of things that you can help guide your customers, but you have to engage them so you can start figuring out what it is that they want to see, plus what it is you want your staff to see, and then those above you to see. So like, what information do your clients request? What information does your staff ask for? Does the information need to be in a report, or is it a display? And what's the difference between a report and a dashboard? What level of information do they need to see? Next slide. And this is just a couple of examples. Yeah, just a couple of examples of what we're talking about. But these are displays or dashboard level. Go ahead, Rick. It's okay. So from there, it's kind of like what Mark was talking about. You have to identify your resources, and you have to get started. What resources do you have? Not just software related, but what personnel resources do you have? Do you have talent and skills in-house to be able to start doing data analytics, or do you need to reach out to someone else in your organization to get help? Do you have to bring in a third-party consultant to get help? What is it that you have the skill set to do? Where can you leverage where can you leverage that talent and skill set to make this happen? And then you have to also figure out, what is there going to be a cost, and what is that cost? Those are important things to kind of answer before you go down the journey of analytics in your fleet. I love that slide. Go ahead, next slide. So for us, as we went down this process, I wanted to talk about some of the lessons learned that we had. So we started the data analytics process a little over a year ago. Not really knowing what we wanted to do, but having an idea, an initial big picture idea. And some of the lessons that we learned from our experience in doing this were, you need to engage with the right people to avoid delays. At first, I didn't know who to reach out to. It took me a little time to figure out who it was. And in that trial and error, once I figured out who it was, which were decision makers, getting in touch with the right people that can make decisions and push things through really helps avoid delays. And then the other part was making sure that the things that you're trying to do aren't just an idea, but it's a prioritized project. Because anybody knows the squeaky wheel gets the grease when it comes to fleet. Whoever's poking the most gets the most attention. So if you prioritize your projects for your data analytics, the things that are really important, make sure that those stay at the top of your priority list and push. So you task out to the people that have the talent and skills, and then you follow up continuously. And then once you start getting down that road of building something, be patient. Be patient on the testing. Push the product out and let the people that are going to use it give you feedback and give them time to really use it and look at it and give you positive feedback. And then once that feedback comes back, push for the change. Push the people that have to make the programmatic changes or the update the tools in your cloud platform. Push them to make those changes. And then, as the slide says, keep calm and pivot, because more than likely, as you go down this, if it's the first time you're going down this path, it's going to change, and it's going to change a lot. Next slide, please. So our first stab was a deadline report. Something that we do here in Miami-Dade County is every night the guys would send out at each shop, all 19 shops, a report to our big clients, being police and solid waste and a couple of others, a report of a list of all the vehicles that were down in for work at the shops. They were doing this nightly. Took a lot of manpower and a lot of time. And we wanted to automate that with just a high level dashboard to kind of give everybody a snapshot of where they're at with some active filtering at the top. And this is great. This is still something that's out there, and there's people that use this that are more data, I don't know, educated, if you will, is the word I'm looking for, because they don't mind filtering out to get down to their department and go look at what's going on. But we, as the fleet management staff, were not happy with this. We thought this was going to be great. And we're like, for an end user, it's not all that great. So we started working with the right people at our customer level, getting their feedback of what they wanted to see, plus what we needed to see. And you can go to the next slide. And we came out with this. And even this isn't perfected, but it's pretty close to what we absolutely needed. And this is something that we did for our vehicle availability program that we have for solid waste. We worked with the customer very over probably 5 or 6 months worth of data gathering from them, because there were things that even they didn't know how to report on, like their peak vehicle requirements by vehicle type, which is the box on the left-hand side of your screen where it says automated side loader, crane, trash truck, roll off. Well, there's a required count there. They had to figure out what that required count is. And if you look at the trash truck, you can kind of see they're still figuring it out. I'm not poking fun. I mean, it's just a work in progress. But what we came out with, this is very similar to one of the slides Mark showed, to where this is a high level overview of what's going on in our heavy shops. And it's a high level overview for the Department of Solid Waste to see that they're really hurting when it comes to spare vehicles that they need, because these vehicles are run hard and require a lot of maintenance, especially in the automated side loader and the trash truck side, because they take a beating. And in our case, they don't have enough vehicles on the street to actually service the customers. And they're addressing that. And this dashboard helped us see some of the gaps, like the spare ratio. Customer didn't want that. We wanted that. The hotline on the left-hand side, that's something where if something comes in for a quick repair, well, what was happening is at our shops, they were opening the work orders for the quick repairs and not closing them until sometime later in the second shift. So it looked like that vehicle was down all day, and it was back out in the street. So that helped us. You notice it's 0 because the guys now can see this dashboard live in their shop. And if they see a hotline repair number pop in, they go find out, why is that not closed? And then the other one that we did was the waiting to be cleaned side, the cleaning section. That was just something that we got a lesson learned while we were doing this process, to where the data helped us tell the story of what was going on in our shops. And it helped the Department of Solid Waste understand because the cleaning part is actually their responsibility. And we had vehicles there that were waiting to be cleaned for months, needing a repair. And now that we have this and they see this, we haven't had a number there in probably 6 weeks, not one. The second we do a waiting to be cleaned, it pops up on the dashboard, they go take care of it. It's a pretty sweet thing. And all that came from just, being engaging, asking a lot of questions, and then, trial and error with the end users. But if you guys are going down this path, vehicle for data analytics, Power BI is a great tool. If you have a fleet software management system, definitely look into, what Mark was talking about. And then what I think Ronald is going to share too. It's an eye-opening experience, and we're just now starting it, and we're really excited about what's coming because we have a lot of things coming down the pipeline. Thanks, Rick.
No, thank you. And, the iterative thing and then the evolving process. I mean, you didn't even think about, cleaning is a thing that would be holding you up. And we see that with other, let's say, items. They bring something that they never even thought of that helps tell the story and helps them solve the issue. So open mind and just keep looking for stuff. All right. Okay, we're going to Sacramento and Ron. Ron, I'm going to let you take us home here.
Good morning or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. This is just our cover slide. Go ahead and next slide, Rick. So Sacramento County, we're a pretty large county. Reading Scott Stevens' stats, I was a little intimidated at looking at the size of his fleet, but we're 994 square miles, population a little over 1.5 million. You can see our fleet mix there, 2,600 fleet units. Our vehicle mile travel, that shows 2021. That went up a little bit in 2022. We're at about 20,502,000. Just under 100 fleet employees, and 73 of those are technicians, and the rest are fleet admin and management. Next slide, please. We've been pretty successful at our initiatives. We've really increased our fuel consumption in the area of renewables and advanced technology. That does include hybrids. There's a reason we do that here at the county. In reality, when you take out hybrids, we're still over 60%. So that's a small percentage. We'll see a little bit of a number here in the next slides. Some independent studies that have been done estimate that results in over 49% of greenhouse gas reduction over using conventional fuels. We do have a climate action plan with the county, and that is implemented in several phases, but the ultimate goal is to be zero emission by 2035 completely. Being in California, this is in a lot of cases where a lot of these regulations and ideas start. So we have Executive Order N7920 that requires or bans the sale of petroleum, either diesel or gasoline cars by 2035. We just had the CARB Advanced Clean Fleet pass that is starts right in January 2024. Pretty aggressive regulations. We also have off-road and PERC regulations. So a lot of different parts of the fleet we got to be looking at. Next slide, please. I'm not going to read every word of this. This is just basically, fleets are all unique, very unique. So anything discussed here, it's up to the individual fleet manager or fleet professional to determine what works for their fleet. We're all dealing with different customer bases and different geographical concerns. So keep that in mind. Also, just like Scott and Mark alluded to, all this stuff is evolving very quickly. Technology is moving very quickly. So a lot of the dashboards and management tools you'll see in our slides upcoming are still in development or evolving. Also keep in mind that, you know, a single report or dashboard is something that is a tool, but you don't want to rely on one single source. You always want to scrub your data and make sure it's accurate, and that's the smartest decision. And then most importantly, all this work shown is not done by me alone. A very small part of it done by me. We have a whole team. We're very lucky to have a very talented IT administrator and system administrator that does a lot of this work where the rubber meets the road. Next slide. So Mark covered a lot of this, but there's a couple points I want to expand on. Mark was right. Your FMIS is going to hold your largest bank of data. And the quality and reliability of that data is completely dependent on the users within your organization. And it starts with equipment setup and the data that you enter from the very start. At the county, we've gone through several rounds of data cleanup just from years of errant data going in, or we decided that certain processes we were using weren't going to work for us anymore. So it's important to make sure it's complete data that you're entering, it's accurate, and even things that you think you don't need now, if that data is available to enter in your system, enter it. Establish standards, process manuals, policy procedures, tech specs. Mark touched heavily on VMRS. I'm a strong believer in that. We at the county, we do use another system, and it was heavily customized for us. But I do believe standardizing to industry standards will help fleets. One, it's just one less thing you have to do. And two, then you're going to blend and be able to use data from other fleets. This is important. Incorporate as many fleet processes into your FMIS as practical. Practical is a very important word there because you can spin your wheels on stuff that's not going to give you a result. So you got to focus on what's important for your fleet. Keep in mind your future needs, but you don't want to have processes going on that don't have a benefit or a payback. Another important thing is carefully set permissions and access throughout your organization. You want to avoid errors in input. Training, very important, every level. Scott touched on downtime reporting a little bit. It really is important that your users understand the process and properly record the downtime. You don't want to paint your organization in a bad light just because you're entering or not updating those work orders. Have a backup plan, make sure it's a redundant plan, and determine the backup levels to fit your fleet and intervals. And then select a service provider, like AssetWorks. There's others, but AssetWorks is a good one that's customizable to your needs and it's going to grow with your fleet. Next slide, please. Telematics, a great source of indisputable, and I put mostly there. You know, again, scrub your data, and I put mostly the idea there is, you know, if you have a vehicle on a frontage road and it's reading it on the, you know, highway, you could have a speeding report where it might be something you need to look into. Speed alerts for safety, diagnostic codes. There's a whole list of benefits there, and I could spend more time on this, but I want to be able to spend more time on some of the future further slides. Next slide, please. Fuel transactions, very important. So you want to capture as much as you can in your FMIS, but you also have to have a process to capture outside fuel transactions, whether that be electric charging or vehicles that run outside of a geographical area, outside your fuel station. So make sure that you can capture all those fuel transactions. Very important. Require odometer readings. This isn't as crucial as if a fleet has telematics, but it's every point you can collect odometer readings is crucial. Treat electricity as a fuel, and enter all of your fuel types, even if it's CNG versus RNG or gasoline versus E85. You want to enter those fuel types on the vehicle level and record what you're burning in your fleet. As you start doing environmental reports on it's going to be very valuable. And then you're going to have miscellaneous data that's not easily imported or captured in your FMIS. And that can be charger provider data, asset management data. At the county, we use a whole other system that is really how we manage assets. M5 has a role in that, but DGS uses Compass, for instance. So, and then fleet specific reports, which will show some of those here coming up. Next slide, please. Like I'm in after hurry. So what do we do with all this data? Next slide, please. TCO reports, and I won't spend a lot of time on this. I think everybody's seen versions of TCO, but at the bottom, I've made a circle here, and if you can go to the next slide, we can note that $5,075 figure and go to the next slide. And then here we have an equivalent truck, but one is diesel, one is CNG. The total cost of ownership of the CNG is higher, but the fuel cost is much lower. And so based on your fleet initiatives, you may come to the realization and accept that an initiative is going to cost you money. But in this case, you can show your customer how they can save money on fuel, and it can help to convince other departments to be accepting of these initiatives, when in another case they may not be. Next slide, please. This is a replacement model we came up with, and as Mark said, technology is advancing. We started this more than 4 years ago, and now there's probably different programs and analytics that can do this now. But at the time, I wasn't seeing anything that was meeting our needs. There's a ton that goes behind the scenes on this, a ton of variables. You can see the inflation factor there. That is completely customizable behind the scenes. This tool analyzes miles per month, months in service. It predicts when a vehicle will hit a certain mileage, and then predicts whether that replacement date is going to be by miles or time. It also has a function where you can look at the delta in utilization, fuel cost, fuel consumption, repair cost, so that if you get to the point where you're in a tight budget situation, this tool can also help you dial in on that portion of the fleet that definitely needs to be replaced, and maybe some that can be deferred. The light blue shows what we have budgeted, and this is a slide from last year. This isn't current, but this is a fully functional tool. And again, though, this isn't the only tool we use. The light fleet manager and the heavy fleet manager also have their separate reports they pull, whether a vehicle is amortized to be replaced. But this is just something additional that they can refer to, and a tool that they can analyze and dig deeper. And there's way more that happens behind the scenes in this. And this started as an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know how to, I'm not proficient in Power BI or even Access. You're as a fleet professional, you're going to have to know what you want to see. You're going to have to convey that to your IT professionals. And there's going to be a lot of rounds of, just like Scott mentioned, you're going to have to scrub these reports, scrub that data. Don't look at it and say, hey, that looks good, and tell your IT guy we're done. Get back and look at the tables and do the math and make sure that what's being shown is actually accurate. Last thing you want to do is depend on something for a year or more and then find out there's flaws in it. Next slide. This is how we track our purchases. And I know I'm low on time, Rick. What do I got? I'm pretty much done now, right?
You can go on. We're shooting to be done by the top of the hour. We got 10 more minutes. So
Okay,
take another
all
5
right.
if you need it.
I'll get through these quickly. So this is something we built into Access. It starts as an Excel sheet, and we'll show this in 2 more slides. But we assigned a percentage of, this is arbitrary, but we assigned a percentage of the procurement process, and to assign a percentage out to 100% done when it's delivered to the customer. Also track budget versus PO amount. This is one screenshot of probably a 13-page report. Next slide, please. And the next slide shows another fiscal year where most of the vehicles on this page have been delivered, and you can see where it shows the total time that it took to acquire that vehicle and get it in service. And you can see all the percentages there. And then the notes help us. These notes also actually flow to the homepage of the supervisor's M5 screen, so they can punch in an old unit number and see if it's up for replacement and what status it's in and how much longer it's going to be, so they can make repair decisions on the fly. So we've integrated this into a lot. Next slide, please. And if you're saying, well, I don't have all those tools or IT professional, this is the version we started with in Excel, and we converted it to Access. And this is what I built. And, this is what I take to IT, and then they make it look fancy and make it feed all the dashboards. I can't do that. But I had in my mind what I wanted to track for my purposes in the procurement office. And so this is where it started. And by the way, I can share this with anybody. If you're buying 20 vehicles a year, it might not be helpful. If you're buying hundreds of vehicles a year, even in the Excel format, it may be helpful to you. Next slide. So as if all those weren't enough, all of that feeds into this. And this is a kind of a high level dashboard. You can see where in this version open is clicked. So it shows all of our open purchases for 22, 23, and that includes law enforcement, light and heavy. Those are how we categorize our fleet. And so this is just a quick screenshot. You can hit the spreadsheet button and it'll show you exactly what units are still open. You can hit the completed button and see what's still, the whole list. We even added a function here to show EV opt means EV optional, meaning show me what vehicles are candidates to replace with EV. And so it can be sorted many, many different ways. And if you were to scroll down on this report, which I can't do in this format, you can drill down even further. Next slide, please. And this is just the same thing sorted for just light equipment 2023. And it shows you the status of, on the left, kind of in the middle there, it shows you the status of each and how many are in each status. Next slide, please. We adapted our forecasting to forecast, and this is a tool development based on inflation factors and markups of EV over conventional. We built this tool out, and there's a lot that goes into our assumptions as to what things are going to cost, and those assumptions are different for heavy, for pickups, for cars, but all the percentages you see there where it says EV estimated markup kind of in the center are customizable, and you can customize them by unit class. You can customize the inflation rate and markup by unit class as well. So there's a lot that can happen behind those scenes. I want to make clear this is not a adopted budget of Sacramento County. This isn't what we plan to go out and spend. This is a tool in development, but it is using actual data. Next slide, please. This is utilization report, and I brought this up just to show trends. So as you see, 2019 and then 2020, utilization went way down, and we can all guess why. And then we can see in 21 and 22 that utilization going back up. But this is good to share with customers, and it's good for our own data. But this is an example of scrub your data. So when I first saw this report, and we're getting ready to fix this now, but you know, it's showing by full 12 months, not by month. So you know, you get this anomaly at the end where, wait, utilization went way down this year, it should be going up. And that's why, and that's my point about scrub your data, make sure you know what's going behind the scenes. Don't just accept that what you're saying is true or accurate. If something doesn't look quite right, you know, find out why and fix it. And also, again, compare this to other data and data sets and reports that, you know, you can rely on. Next slide. Next slide, please. Boy, you're probably already trying. Well, I don't want to hold this too long, but the next slide is a fuel usage report that shows total fuel consumption in our fleet. And the point I wanted to make there is make sure you capture all your fuel transactions. If you're going to do a study like this, it's quite an undertaking. And then some geotab dashboard that's available to anybody and just shows how valuable telematics can be to your fleet. And that's all I have. My contact information is available. And thank you for your time. Sorry for going a little over.
That's fine, Ron. It looks as if Rick's internet has been interrupted. So we will go ahead and take any questions or comments from the attendees. Oh, there he is. You're on mute, Rick.
Back to our regularly scheduled program. Technical difficulty there. Sorry, gang.
No problem.
It's okay. We were just asking the attendees if they have any questions to just go ahead and put them in the chat.
Right. Okay. Current slide. Is that, yeah, this is where we're at. Sorry.
Yeah, if you want to go to the next slide, we'll just quickly show them what I gave them a preview of.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah, so this is our fuel study done year in 2021 or fiscal year 21. Just make sure you're capturing all your fuel, even if it's not captured already. You know, just think, what am I missing and what more can I capture? Next slide. And the geotab telematics dashboards. If you don't have telematics in your fleet, it's a very, very valuable tool. Do anything you can now to work toward getting telematics. And then the last slide is just my contact information. And thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Ron, thank you. A lot of good information, and you know, you covered a lot of different data sources and metrics you can look at. So we really appreciate that, as well as, you know, some of the future stuff you're looking at, that the EV budgeting thing. If it was a little bit of an eye chart, I squinted in close, and
Oh yeah,
those numbers are a little shocking. The funding part of it is a little scary. So we are going to open up. Yeah, we are going to open up the questions, I guess. Either we confused everybody or we answered all their questions. This doesn't look like a huge interactive Q&A at this point. Let's go here. Oh, there. Yeah, everybody's saying we did a great job. That's all I got. Okay. Looking at net, I can see it. Everybody can see it. We've got an organization that's spread out across 5 different states with no in-house maintenance, third-party vendors. You know, how do they approach it? What? Any thoughts? That might be a Mark Knight question. Although I guess, you know, Scott, you're over 19. What'd you say? 19 different facilities. So you have a number. Yours aren't 5 in multiple states, but still, it's spread out across. I mean, what are the things to watch out of intricacies with something like this?
I tell you, for a fully outsourced operation that large, that's you got to kind of start thinking national on that. But any FMIS system that you have, it's all about data management. So if you're outsourcing to vendors across 5 different states, what you would look at, like for instance, the AssetWorks platform has vendor repair tracking built into it to allow you to be able to, across those states, enter all your vendors that do your maintenance, and you can actually put in dates and times of the different processes of your vehicle going in, when it's committed, when it's returned. You have commercial work order vendor repair, you have vendor repair tracking. What you want to look at if you're looking for an FMIS system, you want to look at one that has a vendor repair tracking module within it, so you can do all your asset uploads, open up your work orders, and then track your vendor work performance. And then if you're doing something like quotes or estimates before the work, you can have it within, like M5, for example, you can actually have the quote estimate input. And once they commit and send you the invoice, the software will literally compare your invoice against what the estimate was and flag it for you. So then you can do invoice management with your vendors, no matter where they're at, no matter where they're located. Any fleet management software that has that kind of ability, whether you're doing in-house or external work, it can be tracked. But again, it all has to go back to the data management aspect of it.
And I'm going to give Mark a chance to chime in. I think that a program like AssetWorks can definitely do that. I think the bigger issue is you're going to really have to be on top of where those vehicles domiciled, keep that system updated, keep state regulations in mind. Being in California, what comes to mind is smog checks. You know, if a vehicle moves out of California or into, you're going to have to move them in and out of those programs. And so your system inputs and maintaining where those vehicles are at any given time is going to be the biggest challenge there. I think the system can handle it based on how on top of you are at keeping that information current.
Yeah, and just to add to that, really any FMIS application should be able to support you, but it all comes down to data configuration and workflow management. I think both Ron and Scott have talked about the need to incorporate your data requirements into your workflow processing and your planning, and your procedures. If you're running a commercial repair-based operation, for example, versus shops, your procedures for how you open a work order are going to probably be very different. Are they after the fact? Are you running a call center? There's a variety of different approaches that you may have to take. So the thing to look for is look for an FMI system that's got configuration settings that you can use to incorporate to match the way you want to work. Just about all of the systems out there today can support, a commercial-based fleet operation. But just find one that has the sort of procedures and the way you work. That's going to be the critical thing.
All right, I guess I had a couple of questions as to Ron and Scott. I mean, what drove you guys to seek out an FMIS system? Ron, I know you guys have been at it quite a while. Do you even remember, what drove you toward seeking it out to organize your data and make, database decisions?
So the county had a system long before I got here.
Right.
I would say, if you're dealing with a fleet of 5-8 vehicles, I had small companies of my own in the past, and it was very easy to keep track of a fleet that size, but you cannot do it manually once you're over 15 units. It's just so you will spin your wheels and just not have good immediate data at your disposal. So you really need something to run any modern fleet and to have that data at your disposal.
Right. All right. Scott, you anything to add to that, or?
Well, I think Ronald nailed it. When I first got into the fleet, the business of vehicle fleet was 2010, I think. And that was with a previous, operation, which was City of Dallas. And the issue they had there was square peg round hole with their previous system, and then with M5. But when I came here to Miami-Dade County, they were transitioning from a mainframe system that was fully customized within the county, built out by the county. And they were having a nightmare of a time figuring out how to implement the M5, the fleet management system that they meticulously chose. Like they went through a meticulous process to figure out what fleet management system they wanted. AssetWorks won. And then for a year, they were just floundering like a fish out of water, trying to figure out how to use the system because it is so massive and it has so many features. When I came here, I came here for that purpose, to help them standardize their data, to help them standardize their job coding systems, to help them understand what labor, real-time labor work looked like, how to all the nomenclature, all the transitional things. They needed the help. So when you're looking at a fleet management information system, if you don't have one, say you're working on spreadsheets, the main thing is don't look at what it is that you do now and you want something that allows you to do it in a new system. Look at your entire operation and say, where are my gaps? What is it that I don't have? What is it that I wish I had? And approach it from that aspect and take the opportunity, like Ron was saying it earlier, to scrub your data and say, what is working for us and what is not working for us? What system can address the things that aren't working for us? And let's take advantage of every opportunity that system has to help us standardize, streamline, and gain efficiencies in our work, especially for your frontline users, the guys that turn the wrenches. Those guys are the ones you really want to have a keen mind for. Or if you're a commercial fleet, it's about the data process of invoicing and payment. You have to think that whatever I've done in the past, I'm going to scrub that, and let's think about, if I could start over, what would I do, and go from there. That's what we did here.
Right. Some good points in terms of, the iterative process, looking the things that potentially are non-issues that are making an issue. Like I said, the truck's not being cleaned was showing your vehicles is down and out of service. And do those sanity checks. Does it make sense that, just don't rely on it and look at it from multi dimensions. Like Ron said, don't look at one piece of data and take that as gospel and go run with it. Some good stuff, some good points. I guess any final round of remarks. We're going to close this out here from our three panelists.
Mark, I want the cloud.
I will say that, think into the future, look at what other fleets in other states are doing, look at regulations in other states. Don't get too comfortable thinking that some regulations will never come to your state. If you have data historical data on your fleet. It's really going to help you when new regulations take effect. And I think generally, because I see this on a lot of fleets, look for the payoff in everything you're doing, and prioritize everything in that matter. If it doesn't have a payoff at the end, spend your time doing the things that's going to increase your customer satisfaction or lower your bottom line. And another thing that I say sometimes is don't try to solve problems you don't have. Be prepared for them, but understand your fleet and look for that low hanging fruit.
Great information, guys. I really appreciate it. So thank you, and we're going to sign off for today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Mark, Scott, and Ron. Thank you all for attending today's session. We look forward to seeing you at the June 28th session, Hydrogen Applications for Transportation. Until then, everybody have a great afternoon.
All right. Bye all.